It's time for the State of Pro Wrestling, scheduled for one fall with a 60-minute time limit. And now, from parts unknown, your tag team champions of the world, John Orlando for the PVDCast and Gerald Glassford from the Pop Culture Cosmos. Ding, ding, ding. And we're back with another episode of the State of Pro Wrestling. It's a special episode of the State of Pro Wrestling here for you today. Please go ahead and make sure you catch all of our shows, including, of course, the Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Also, as well, you want to go ahead and make sure you catch my Lakers show, Lakers Fast Break on that channel, and, of course, the daily show that I do, Lakers Latest. All these great shows. Please make sure you like and subscribe. Go ahead and reach out to us with popculturecosmos at yahoo.com or put your comments in below. We'll go ahead and make sure we answer them. Indeed, we're going to ask you, I'm going to go ahead and start asking you by a question here before I get to John, my tag team partner. What is your favorite moment and your least favorite moment in World Championship Wrestling, the history of WCW? This goes back for the longtime fans of the business that saw them throughout the late 80s, through the 90s, and into the very early 2000s. What are your thoughts and what are your favorite moments and not so favorite moments of WCW? Let's hear your answers below or popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. But it wouldn't be a State of Pro Wrestling without my tag team partner. Indeed, he steps into the ring at a combined weight with me alongside the weight of 300 pounds. That makes us very svelte indeed, but it is, of course, a good man indeed. I'm just kidding. Of course, I'm far from it. It is, of course, a good man indeed. Please go ahead and catch what he's doing today on his great shows, the PVDcast, of course, and also Matt Talk. It is John Orlando. John, great to have you here. We got suggested in this about reliving the past with World Championship Wrestling, a very hard to describe organization overall, where they were at, what they provided, how they were the alternative to WWE or WWF at that time, their 83-week run of success, and how it didn't translate soon thereafter to continued success for that company.
Well, yes, I think that WCW and its history is marred with lots of oops, if you will. Oops, that didn't work out. Oops, we should not have signed that person. Oops, this person's out on injury, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it. I mean, we could probably spend 4 hours talking about it on the show. But yeah, it's definitely a topic that. Well, it's been argued, debated, and whatnot for the last several years as to what could have been, what should have been with WCW.
I would liken it to, I guess, instead of the little engine that could, this was the large wrestling company that didn't, and had a chance to and could, but didn't ultimately end up being successful. They had every opportunity, backing financially, years where there was a patient organization behind them that would allow them to run up massive red, books in the red for debt for years. And still they kept going and going and going, and finally saw a turnaround to the point where they were briefly throwing a profit in their way. And just through greed, mistrust, like you said, mismanagement, and letting everyone go ahead and do what they want, as far as at the high level, it seemed like they all let it get away from it. It's a lesson in how not to run a wrestling organization.
Yeah, I mean, although I think too that we're going to talk a little bit about maybe some of the events that they had, the pay-per-views and whatnot, and some of those didn't help matters. I can think of a couple that I was like, my goodness, that's the worst match I've ever seen in my life. But then on the other hand, on the other hand,
That's the best match I've
yeah,
seen in my life.
yeah, I mean, absolutely. So, I'm curious. I can't wait to get into it and chat about it. And so let's get it going, shall we?
Absolutely, my friend. Again, as we talk about this, you could almost sense our great appreciation for it as fans of the alternative wrestling. Although I must admit, the spectacle and the storytelling of WWF in those late '80s and early '90s were always something I always kept an eye on a weekly basis. But the action and the wrestling of World Championship Wrestling in the late '80s and early '90s were something that obviously wrestling fans of I guess that wanted to diversify themselves were really more into as far as that's concerned. They felt it was the territorial wrestling at its height was World Championship Wrestling. I would probably say that because they didn't change from what they were, the wrestlers, when they go there. They would just make sure that they were given a good spotlight and tried to bring you the best in-ring product as possible. Whereas the WWF tried to bring you the best presentation as possible, which was ultimately the reason why WWF ultimately won out. WCW followed that pattern, when they've realized it was about the presentation and not about the matches in the ring primarily all the time. They got that 83-week run, but ultimately, again, like I said, their mismanagement was to their ultimate doom. But we're gonna not point fingers because if we pointed fingers who killed WCW, I think I would use like more than 10 fingers if I was pointing.
Oh, absolutely. It's more than just Eric Bischoff. Like, I know that he
Oh,
takes the brunt of it, but it's more than just him.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a
It
lot of
was a group effort. I'm going to tell you
uh-huh.
right now, it's a group effort, and yeah, to bring down this entire company, and they did a great job in doing so, indeed. But let's get to some of the reasons why we're here. I also want to start off by saying I think not always the best WCW product was at the pay-per-views, although there are several pay-per-views that are always fondly remembered when it comes to WCW, like of course, Wrestle War '92. We all also remember Halloween Havoc, as far as is concerned, with the outstanding one of the great light heavyweight matches of all time. Was it 89 or 88? As far as Halloween Havoc with Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero. You have the Wrestle War with '92 with the incredible match that was, but we also cannot forget the implementation, and one of the best things that ever happened for wrestling fans were the Clash of Champions. So I'd like to go
Mhm.
ahead and ask you if we can include that in our conversation as well.
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. I kind of overlooked them because I was looking more on pay-per-views, but that was a pay-per-view that was on free TV on TBS. I remember watching the first one. I went and watched it in my aunt's house because at that time my family didn't have cable, but my aunt lived a couple doors up from me. And I asked her, and she was like, "Sure, you can come watch it." And I was so glued to the TV, watching Sting and Flair and all the other matches that were on that show. Fantastic. It was great.
Absolutely. And I'm just saying this because of the fact that I think that in and of itself, uh, they were WCW's attempt to fight back against the Saturday night main events that WWF was promoting, and in and of itself felt like a really special event in and of itself. Yes, it wasn't a pay-per-view, but you could see pay-per-view quality matches throughout the card when you're watching Clash of Champions as well.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, it seemed that the longer that they went, in terms of how many they had, it seemed like the booking got a little bit suspect, especially towards the end of Clash of Champions. But you look back, I mean, there's so many great memories and matches there that I mean, we could spend all night talking about those.
By the way, it was 97. I forgot it was 97 here in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand.
Oh, was that Rey Mysterio and Eddie?
Yes,
Okay.
Eddie Guerrero. Yes, that is absolutely fantastic match. I was at. I know I went to which I think. Don't think I went to. I think I went 98. Is the one I went to. But I will say this: absolutely a fantastic match. If you get it your way to see it, and it's great because WWF, despite all of its poor things that we talk about as far as the way they've done, as far as they're managing themselves, as like one of the great things that they've done is institute on YouTube the ability for us to relive those moments, whether it's WCW or through the WWE Vault. They've created two channels now for us to go ahead and relive many of those moments, John.
Hmm. And what a smart decision, you know,
Yes,
in a company that over the last few months we have doubted their intelligence on doing certain things. That certainly is a feather in their cap, so to speak.
absolutely indeed. So, where would you like to turn first as far as your, I guess, a really great moment in time for WCW that you want to relive?
Well, okay. I want to go back in time, back before the 83 weeks, back before Clash of the Champions. One of my favorite memories was the event called the Jim Crockett Senior Memorial Cup Tag Team Tournament.
Hmm.
That is one of mine of all time. I as a kid, I got granted I had to watch what little clips they showed on the broadcast. I didn't have and nobody at that point, because I if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was only shown through closed circuit TV and not on pay-per-view. This is pre-pay-per-view. Um, but getting the after mags and reading up and seeing that, oh, these all these great wrestlers from all over came. Tiger Mask was here and Giant Baba, and they brought in folks from all over the place, like Central States tag team champions were here, the Batten twins. To me, it was like really cool to see all of these wrestlers I'd never seen before, or some really unique pairings. Like I know in '87, Arn Anderson teamed with Kevin Sullivan because Ole Anderson got kicked out of the Horsemen. And like it was really just a cool concept for me, because even like some enhancement teams got a shot at being in the tournament. It was over multiple days, which made it seem like an even bigger deal that, oh my gosh, it's over Saturday and Sunday. Um, yeah, to me, that was the coolest one. Even though '88 was a little bit weak in terms of the matches, I still to my fandom of WCW, this has got to be my number one memory, or number one event that I really really enjoyed.
I'm going to start off with some of my favorite memories. Is something in the year 1989. It for me as a wrestling fan is probably one of the best years ever for wrestling as far as an in-ring product. I know you even saw some good stuff coming from WWE, and you saw some, or F at that time. You saw some great stuff still around the territories, the dying days of the territories in 1989. You still saw some good, still saw some stuff that might still stir the emotions, but it was 1989 that brought you some of the best wrestling on the planet at that point in time at WCW, and was started with in what I would call one of the best technical wrestling showcases as far as three matches that you can see between Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and the
Hmm.
Nature Boy Ric Flair. And yeah, I know that Nature Boy Ric Flair these days, he's a caricature of in many ways of himself. A lot of people don't they know who he is, but they don't know what he did really as far as they're concerned because they haven't looked that far back. But if they were to go ahead, and I would say if you want to see the best of Ric Flair, 1989 is it. For me, it starts off with that as far as the three matches that they have. In fact, what they did at WWE is they actually tied all three. They actually on the WCW channel, get this, they've tied all three matches that they had during the course of 1989 in one package. So you can see as far as those two with the Chi-Town Rumble, also with the Clash of Champions, and then of course the final match as well. So again, with all three of those matches, as far as that they had, you could see it, those two in their prime. You could see those two really working their match. They were great friends off camera, but you could also see the chemistry that those two had on the matches, in the ring as well.
I will say this because watching a lot of the Ric Flair DVDs, when I used to buy WWE DVDs back when, we did that. Um, um, Even some of the earlier stuff with Steamboat and Flair, because they had a pretty big run in Mid Atlantic in 83, 84.
Mhm.
And even that stuff is really, really good, even though they both, well, I think Flair was kind of in his prime. Steamboat was kind of getting into his prime, but still fantastic matches. Absolutely amazing.
Absolutely amazing indeed. Again, if you go out of your way, Chi-Town Rumble, what was the one in New Orleans? I'm going to look that one up. But they also had, again, three great matches during the course of 1989, battling for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. And if you go out of your way to see it, please do so because it's on the WCW channel. In fact, their 1994 rematches are also attached onto it as well. But you will get to see over 3.5 hours of great footage between those two because they worked so well together, and they were given the freedom in WCW to do so. So whatever we could say about WCW as far as how they were run, how they were managed, et cetera, the bad ideas, the bad booking. When you talk to about world title matches or important matches for that company, they were always given the wrestlers whatever leeway they needed to do to go ahead and work out, really good matches when given the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I also though would like to maybe kind of go back to what you said a little bit ago about wrestling. In the late '80s, early '90s, we start getting a little bit of a lull, especially that year of '91, '92, '93, where we're getting a little bit of a lull in popularity. Um, I think that at that junction in time, the WCW was copying quite a bit from the WWF and getting away from that in-ring product, as you said, because you think about all the really weird gimmicks that they had, at that time, because they're trying to appeal to kids, Arachnaman, the Ding Dongs, Big Josh, Elegante, like those characters were very hokey. And I think that if we're going to talk about the failures of WCW, I think that era is a failure because they're just following what somebody else is doing. Do something yourself, do something original, do something on your own, and you might get a better result from your audience, from your crowd.
The three matches I wanted to go ahead and highlight again: Wrestle War '89, Clash of the Champions 6, and of course Chi-Town Rumble. So go out of your way to see it. Again, it's all set up for you on WCW channel on YouTube, and it's right there for you. 3.5 hours, and added extra matches for them as well. There's also if you want to go ahead and explore the channel, there's also a rarely before seen match before Ricky Steamboat left the WCW to go to the WWF at that time in 1984 between the two as well. That's a 60-minute banger as well. So again, those two always had great matches. But 1989 also is personified by my favorite match of all time. I think I've mentioned this to you before, but the Clash of Champions in Troy, New York, with a great angle leading up to it with after the final match between Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair in 1989. Ric Flair was pile driven by Terry Funk. At what time, at one time, pile driving on a table was a scary move, and people were just so frightened to see it. And at that time, Ric Flair was pile driven onto a table by Terry Funk and was out. I'm sure he was very. I'm sure Space Mountain was not out. Let's just put it that way during that point in time. But Ric Flair was off television for a little while, but he came back with a vengeance, and it led to one of the most Ric Flair great matches of all time, because he did things with psychology, did things with a little bit of hardcore flavor, did things that he didn't normally do at that point in time, and didn't do a whole lot after that. And that was in Clash of Champions in the I Quit match, which is one of the few results that have ever surprised me in my entire life, John, because I didn't know at that point in time Terry Funk, as a two-time NWA champion, was going to say the words "I quit" on national television. I did not know that he was that type of individual that was willing to put over and what was needed at that point in time. I clearly thought this was going to go be a schmoz finish and end up, after a great match, be something like, okay, terrible finish, but we'll move on with this feud and go on. This was an absolute incredible match, built with intensity, built with anger. Although, again, like Steamboat, Flair had a deep respect for Terry Funk off camera. But you could see the chemistry between those two, and you could see how it worked so well as far as what they portrayed to the people out there in Troy, New York on that night. And again, you tell me about my favorite match. That is my favorite match. I've never been able to see it duplicated as far as what they put in the ring, what they did in the ring. I Quit matches were kind of novel at that point in time, especially the way that they had to put it over house mic and whatnot. It was not something that was done very much at the time, so it was kind of novel. And the fact that the way that they had a finish, they had a clean finish. They had Terry Funk saying "I quit" on national television. Absolutely surprised me for one of the few times in my pro wrestling life. So that is by far away my favorite match of all time. It is probably, it has to be for me the best match technically I've seen of all time. And I've yet to see a match since. No matter how great the high flyers are, like I talked about with Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio Jr., and how fantastic that was, and other things I've seen in ECW, AEW, WWE. Since then, I've seen fantastic matches from all these organizations. I still can't match. It still can't match the intensity that I saw that night when I was watching Clash of the Champions in Troy, New York.
Yeah, the build for that is the greatest build for a wrestling match, I think, possibly ever. I mean, just I remember the personal insults, the the just the way
Ric
in
Flair
which,
had the neck collar and all
yeah,
that. Just
yeah, like they sold it so well. I got kind of tongue tied on how to try to describe it, but it hooked me and made me want to believe, and it made me go, I got to see this match. I have to see this match. And it's a shame that we don't see more of that in today's modern product. But yeah, definitely, I would agree with you that that was one heck of a match.
And unfortunately, they didn't continue that feud very well. Again, another mishandling of how that happened, because you had the heights of that. After, they didn't know where to take it from there, and really, it was just let down from there. But again,
But
that is that's WCW to a T right there. What are
do
more fond memories do you have of WCW at any point in time in the timeline, my friend?
real quickly before we move on, there didn't they? Wasn't the movement to the next storyline? Wasn't it that Terry Funk got turned babyface because he was feuding with Gary Hart's crew?
Yeah, well, it exactly, yes, and because they also had, remember, but they also had a match, a tag team match at a pay per view as well with Terry Funk and the Great Muta versus Sting and Ric Flair. But it really went awry. But you're right. Because he wanted to shake his hand, Terry Funk turned face and whatnot, but the face turn for Terry Funk was like limited, because by the end of the year, he was just doing announcing for the company and just an
Yeah.
interviewer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you take one of the greatest workers on ever, and you turn him into an interviewer by the end. Only WCW could have done that, my friend.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential there for that feud with Gary Hart's men versus Terry Funk. I think that I didn't have a problem with the babyface turn. It's just like it just didn't amount to anything. It just fizzled out.
Yes, it did, my friend. Yes, it did. But let me know your thoughts on something that you saw that you really enjoyed about the WCW, whether it was the NWO angle, how it portrayed itself up, because that was well done, leading up to Bash at the Beach, or at the height of Goldberg at the Georgia Dome and whatnot, or do you have some fond memories of the early '90s with WCW when they really like they would later recapture the light heavyweight division and had some really good matches during those periods as well?
I definitely think that the Luchadors were a favorite part of WCW for me because again the athleticism, the high flying, just the whole overall the way that they were presented, and part of that you have to give credit to Mike Tenay for, because you need that person to tell you and explain things in a way that's not insulting or disrespectful to your audience. And I think if they had just had the Luchadors without Mike Tenay, I don't know if it would have hit just the same. I don't know. But definitely, I always enjoyed. To me, they were the highlight of a Nitro or a Thunder. Is the Luchadors in doing their action.
Absolutely. I can't say I disagree with you on that as well. But some of the early things before we get into maybe some of the later '90s with the WCW, I don't want to leave out some of the great things that happened early in 1991, '92. Even though financially it wasn't the greatest time for the company. This was just before the I guess the really rise of Big Van Vader and also then into Hulk Hogan. 1991 and 92 Wrestle War were highlights, I think, for fans that want to seek out really fun shows that this company actually put on. 1992, I know with as far as the Phoenix event, because I know that people love that show still to this day, as far as from almost top to bottom, as far as is concerned, 1992. But I don't want to forget 1991 as well, because 1991 to me was really good, especially that Wrestle War match itself. If you remember the War Games match. But your thoughts, my friend, on those early days in the '90s with some of the matches, including stuff that didn't work out so well, like the Lethal Lottery and the sometimes the two, the battle royals or the mixed tag team chat, as far as the mixed tag team uh, pay-per-views that they had, where you had people coming in from that, weren't associated with each other, in the ring with each other, stuff like that. Some of the stuff that they tried didn't work during those days, but those war games matches, when it all led to those war games matches of the early '90s, like in '91 and '92, I really think that that is probably where you would talk about the end of where the peak WCW, as far as that period of time just before the Vader Hogan WCW NWO Nitro Thunder era begins. The war games were probably for me the highlights just before then.
Yeah, I mean, War Games has always been a very interesting spectacle. I'm gonna go out on a limb. I liked Battle Bowl, the Lethal Lottery. I thought it was a great idea. Just you're right. Maybe Gerald, it could have
Just
been
who they
executed
got
better.
in there to go and meet you.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, I mean, look at it. I can't remember what pay per view it was where they did the Iron Man, where everybody was in the round robin tournament, and the opportunity to make a star out of Muda, and Muda loses every match. He goes 0-4.
That was a Starcade. But I'm trying to
Was it
block that
okay?
out of my. It was a Starcade, and he lost. Yes, the guy that you should have pushed and given a world title run to, you ended up giving him a zero, and you wonder why WCW at that time was really losing money hand over fist.
Yeah, I mean, Look, he's a cool dude. It didn't matter that he was a heel. They could have turned him babyface very easily.
People
And
were cheering him, and they didn't
yes,
care.
no, they didn't care because he was awesome. Like he was an amazing performer. And just, I don't understand how you dropped the ball on that one.
It again, it just WCW. That's all you need to say. But if I'd say I know 92 and 91 war games. The 92 war games as far as the actual Wrestle War card is thought of extremely well because there's a lot of good stuff there, during that card. But the war games itself, it's very close between 91 and 92. But I would lean 91 simply because of the fact that Sid Vicious destroyed Brian Pillman. I don't know if you remember the power bomb where he power bombed, and as he raised him up, it was so high up, and the fence, the top of the cage was so low that he actually ended up knocking him out when he raised
Yeah.
him up, and then all right, Sid, you did your damage, my friend. It's done. It's over with. But that was a great one. And then, of course, 92 followed up with that with the Dangerous Alliance. Again, another missed opportunity because you had one of the greatest talkers in professional wrestling, and you did everything you could to get rid of him or move him aside. So yeah, again, some good memories mixed in with some bad ones as well, John.
Well, can I talk about one of my worst
Yeah, absolutely.
memories? Oh my goodness. This is, again, thinking about pay-per-views. To me, I think one of the worst matches I've ever seen took place in Halloween Havoc 98. And that's the Warrior versus Hulk Hogan. And the reason why I say it was so bad, I was giving it an open mind. I was excited to see this rematch. All right, Gerald. Now, I may have been naive. I may have been, I don't know. I may not have been of sound mind when I thought that I can't wait to see this, but I was amped up for that match. I was very excited for it. I knew it wasn't going to be Mania 5. I knew that. But I was going to see a clash of the Titans one more time, and they were going to give us something. And man, oh man, did they give us something! All right, something, a big bag of crap. That's what they gave us, because that was awful. And so I vividly remember I went to a buddy's house, and he was equally as jacked as I was to watch it, and we both watched it. And I remember, Gerald, at the end, we just were so let down and cursing up a storm about WCW, how they could do this to us. And even though there was still Goldberg versus DDP as the main event, which, if you remember, that's the night that they didn't do the time correctly for the pay-per-view, and the pay-per-view cut off in the middle of that main event.
Yep.
Which
WCW.
how do you not know that you're going 3.5 hours? Like that, anyways. So that's one of my negatives was Hogan Warrior. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was so disappointed.
By the way, before we continue, I wanted to give a big shout out to a great recaller of the highs and lows of WCW, and that's Tom Green, who hosts the Not Tom Green or Not That Tom Green channel, where he covers a lot of professional wrestling from the heydays, the territories, the 90s, whatnot, some of the good, but really a lot of the bad of pro wrestling. But he has a lot of great shorts out there that that he calls WCW deep cuts, also ECW deep cuts, but mainly WCW deep cuts because there's so much, and I'm going to repeat this again, so much that WCW did wrong during the course of well 12 to 15 years, or it's about 13, 14 years, that he has just I think over 100 shorts based on things that happened mainly bad during the course, or mistakes or things that happened like you talked about with the faux pas there with the pay-per-view and all that. He has that in detail for you. So if you want to check out the entire bad history of WCW, go just type in on YouTube WCW deep cut, and it is definitely worth watching. even if it's just like one or two a day. It's just these shorts are just amazing that he does, and he deserves a lot of credit for it. And I just wanted to bring that out there. But my friend, before we go ahead and head on out of here, I wanted to go ahead. We would be remiss of us to not talk about the highs of WCW, and that
Okay.
was started by not necessarily Hulk Hogan coming back while he was making Thunder in Paradise. He, incorporated himself, got the big deal with WCW. Universal Orlando Studios. They were like had that parade there when he signed and whatnot, and he came back to the company and he faced off against Flair and Vader and whatnot in the traditional red and yellow. It wasn't until that Eric Bischoff soon thereafter got the idea for or got the go ahead from Ted Turner, may he rest in peace, to get the go ahead and start Nitro head to head with WWF Raw. But it was also the fact that they were acquiring talent, and the talent that they acquired that was most pertinent to the short-term success of World Championship Wrestling was Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and bringing them in as the outsiders and having that angle with a lot of people second guessing, saying, aren't they still supposed to be with WWE? Are they still or WWF at that time? Aren't they still supposed to be with WW? That kind of mystery and the way it was portrayed on a week to week basis, also again showcasing them as outsiders, really made things exciting over the course of many weeks. And then what a lot of people were questioning at that point in time, but ultimately proved out to be success, was turning Hulk Hogan from a stale face that he had been for years into a new, fresh packaging as Hollywood Hulk Hogan to be the centerpiece of NWO going forward. And for a while, it caught the wrestling world on fire. 83 weeks later, it ultimately proved that that was a success for over a year period of time, John.
Hmm. I remember when it was revealed that Hogan was the third man. I was shocked about it. I think I had
Bash at
said
the
something.
beach.
Bash at the beach, and my stepfather came into the room and said, "What's going on?" And I said, "They Hulk Hogan turned bad," and he was flabbergasted. And I mean, he had no idea. Like,
96.
yeah, he had no idea what He knew who Hulk Hogan was, and he knew he was the good guy always. I mean, he was blown away by that. So that, to me, that showed me just how important this angle was. Yeah, and it just kicked off. I just wish that, much like many things in pro wrestling, that you would just wrap things up while it was still good and not beat it into the ground. Um, but I mean, that happened. That's not just to the NWO. There's been, I mean, I think that you could name a
Well, when you
hundred
have a
different.
good thing in pro wrestling, you got to admit everybody wants to jump on it.
Right, exactly, yes. And
I
so,
expect 17,000 Danhausens by the end of the year, by the way. Just wanted to make sure and let you know because everybody will want to jump on that Danhausen train very soon. To the end, I'll leave it at that. But the end, everybody wanted to be a part of the NWO, and Eric Bischoff, seemingly, or whoever's in charge after him, couldn't say no to somebody signing up every week. And then NWO having branching off into the red and black or wolf pack and all that stuff. That's obviously where it went awry. But for a brief period of time, it was really good. It was compelling. It was much CTV, and you had to see it. You must see TV with with NWO, and WWF had to retaliate with the Attitude Era, and that's what really kicked off that battle back and forth when the product, I think, was at one of its highest peaks ever in this industry. But going back to that moment at Bash of the Beach 1996, I just wanted to mention how I'd never been a Hulk Hogan fan until that point in time, and I thought that was really cool that he was going to go and turn into Hollywood Hulk Hogan at the time. I thought that was a good look for him. But God, did I love the trash that was thrown into the ring at 1996. That was just amazing. The response that you got, you know, I would you say it's nuclear in the business? That's what they call it when you get the most amount of heat for that. Would you say that's close to about as nuclear as you could get for an American audience?
I'd say yes. I would definitely
Okay.
say that that would be, yes, a prime example.
Mhm. I'd say it's close to it. I again, they didn't do ECW and throw chairs in there, thank goodness. They just threw trash. So I'll just leave it at that. But I will say this again. I am really, really blessed to have been able to experience that from the late '80s to the early '90s to what we experienced through the NWO, the Attitude Era as a whole, and then obviously delving into the latter part of the WCW, their height with NWO, and then Goldberg. Your thoughts on how they handled Goldberg? Obviously, having him go on that fantastic run week after week on Nitro, it created excitement, it created energy and enthusiasm. It was a star that was built outside of the NWO realm. And then it all went away because of a shock stick. And yeah, it just, and then after that, the crazy decisions, the finger of doom, finger poke of doom, uh, David Arquette having a run at the world championship. It just went awry so fast. The great ideas that they had with the NWO, Monday Nitro, the light heavyweights coming back in vogue, the luchadors incorporated, the great ideas that they had, and the talent that they had that they brought in, like the Jerichos of the world and the Chris Benoits of the world and Eddie Guerreros of the world that they brought in and incorporated. All those great things that they had were also doubled down by some really dumb things that they did in the late '80s that really, oh, excuse me, the late '90s that killed off their business ultimately.
Yeah, I think with Goldberg, I think as you mentioned, Gerald, I think at the beginning it was handled very, very well. It was done very, very well. And I think that when you get to, within a year or 2 years of Goldberg, they had certainly lost the path that they were on, and yeah, that's what led us to all these goofy ideas. You forgot about Viagra on a pole too, by the way. That was
Oh, that was later. That's the Vince Russo era. I mean, that is the ultimate death of WCW was when Vince Russo was given the reins, the Millionaires Club, all
oh
that forgettable stuff as far as in 1990, late 1999, 2000, and ultimately the death year of 2001, leading to Greed, which I think was their final pay-per-view that they had. That really was just an area of time where I turned it off because it was just so bad to watch.
yeah, agreed. I would watch it, but very passively. While I was doing other things, and yeah, there was just some really awful stuff in that catalog of Rousseau's ideas, which to me that always showed me that Vince Russo was great only because he was allowed to be great in the WWF. Meaning he had Vincent Kennedy McMahon to say, no, we're not doing that. That's ridiculous. Or, you know what I mean? Like he had a stopgap. Where in WCW, Russo was allowed to do as he darn well pleased. And it showed in the silly, ridiculous. I mean, we're also forgetting that ridiculous match where he was dressed in the New York Giants football gear, where either he defended or he won the world title. I can't remember which way it was. And anyways, it's just an example of his terrible booking.
David Arquette getting a run as WCW champion. That in itself was a disgrace to the industry. And again, it's just something. The finger poke of doom. They killed themselves. They killed
Hmm.
themselves, and they have only themselves to blame for the downfall of WCW. It just became a product that was unwatchable, and Vince Russo had a lot to do with it. You wonder why Vince Russo has such a bad rep with a lot of people out there. If you look at it objectively, you can see the crash TV that worked for him in WWF, but he had a buffer in Vince McMahon that would, I guess, not take all the ideas out there. Now, not everything worked in the Attitude Era with Crash TV, but there was enough that worked that made the product something worth watching. But when those reins were taken off and he was not given no buffer and was allowed to do what he pleased in WCW, that really was where it just started to take a downturn from there, my friend.
Hmm. Do you think that had WCW in 2001, if they had maybe shift themselves to being a predominantly southern, southeastern promotion, that they could have survived, at least for a few more years?
Well, they had to stop doing national tours. They had lost, with the Warner Brothers the Warner Brothers AOL merger. They were losing their spots, or they're losing their time spots. You remember that Eric Bischoff wanted to buy back the company. He and Jason Hervey were trying to buy back WCW before it ultimately got sold, but it was based on the fact that they were going to go ahead and get those time slots on cable television, which ultimately proved that not to be true, and thus it got sold to WWF later. I know that one of the problems that has been mentioned throughout periodically is that before it reached its heights in the mid to late 90s, and then after it stopped reaching its heights in the late 90s and early 2000s, one of the complaints was that they were still touring like a national company when financially it was killing them, like it was killing them beforehand. So yes, it could have, if it had gone to a regional status, or a maybe where AEW is at right now, in playing in smaller locations throughout the country instead of trying to fill out arenas that they can no longer fill. Maybe you could have gotten away with it, but again, you need that television product. So if they were going to lose TBS and TNT, they had to replace it with something that they needed to go ahead and land on, which would showcase them in front of a large audience. And I don't think that anybody there was going to go, that had control of WCW after the AOL Time Warner merger, wanted to go ahead to make any effort to put the product anywhere else.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. That TV deal was the linchpin to everything.
Yeah. I mean, when you've got millions of eyes, remember, because millions more eyes were even at the failure, even at the last bit of time, even in those final weeks of WCW, more people watched that than watched Wrestling Now on a weekly basis. When you look at it, I mean, they were getting more than 2 million viewers on a regular basis each and every week on Nitro, even at the end. So with that said, it's just still the fact that, once you lose that, it's just so hard to be visible in any other format. And it just seemed like no one, and when I hear all these conversations about what happened, who's trying to gain control, who's has control, um AOL Time Warner had no longer any interest in pursuing wrestling as a wrestling company, stuff like that. And then, of course, Eric Bischoff and other entities trying to buy WCW. I never hear the thought of really, to an extent, of really trying to go ahead. I know Eric Bischoff had some negotiations with other places, but the key was to try and keep it on a large format on like TNT and TBS, and they just, without that, you just don't have much of a product left over.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't know what more to say. I mean, we're I mean, we've sat here and talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. I just always thought that it should have been shrunk down a little bit and predominantly stayed in that southeastern or southern part of the United States, you know, that maybe it
I,
would have been more successful.
I'm going to say this. Their last pay per view they did, I believe, was called Greed, as I said earlier. Uh, I think that's very fitting.
Yeah.
I think that's very fitting for the final pay per view for this company, and the fact that it could not survive because it just Greed was the reason why they did not survive, because everybody wanted a piece of what was good, what was hot, was what was successful, and what was getting them paid on guaranteed contracts. And once that was taken away, it became a free for all, and every man for themselves.
Hmm. Yeah, the thing that we didn't really talk too much about is that creative control. How many wrestlers had creative control over their characters in that? I mean, you
Well, that's
know,
the NWO. Once the
that's
NWO
right.
got all the power, the problem is the NWO got all the power.
Yep. And look, wrestling, I hate to say this because it's going to sound so maybe uncouth, but in the world of pro wrestling, you cannot have the talent making all the decisions for their characters. You got to have somebody that's saying, that'll work, that won't work. We're not doing this. We are doing this. You just can't leave the boys by themselves to come up with their own stuff, and not without a filter.
No, no, and it was just a shame to see WCW end like it did because you were worried about that time what would happen as far as the wrestling industry is concerned because with no real contender because ECW also fell the way of the
Hmm.
dodo at, right around there too. Their failed deals with Spike and their failed deals trying to become a national organization as well. What would happen to the industry and then when there's only one when there's a monopoly and better sense the word no better sense of the word as a monopoly. And as much as we poop on AEW, the fact that they are a viable number two to WWE, even though there's quite a gap as we see, and we don't like the product all the time with WWE. We just talked about the ads coming on before the show, as far as the numerous ads during the WWE showcase. At least the viable product is there that people can turn to as an alternative. And when you and I got tired of seeing the same squash matches every weekend on WWF Superstars or WWF Challenge, we would always turn to TBS at 7:05 Eastern to go ahead and check out what was going on with World Championship Wrestling and seeing what excitement could go on from there, or checking out a Clash of Champions and feeling that it was kind of special because it came on a certain day of the week on a certain month at a certain point in time. In some cases, we felt it was more exciting than seeing the pay-per-view that the WCW was running instead, or the Great American Bash, and wondering if it would come to our hometown as far as is concerned when they had a series of matches over the course of the summer months. There were things at that point in time that we could see as an alternative that for many years, my friend, we did not
Hmm.
see out of the professional wrestling industry after WCW folded up.
Yeah, we were force fed whatever the WWF was going to give us, and for the first couple of months, we got the WCW invasion angle, which was a complete debacle. Um, so yeah, we were forced to just take whatever the WWF was giving us, and you know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the industry, Gerald. It doesn't matter if we're talking about pizza places or uh hospitals or whatever. You got to have competition. Competition drives innovation. It drives people to do creative things. And without WCW or ECW for that matter, the WWF just got to run roughshod.
Absolutely, indeed, my friend. But again, we always love traveling down that road to memories gone by. Hopefully, someday we can go ahead and revisit other organizations from the past. World Championship Wrestling, excuse me, I'm sorry, World Class Championship Wrestling would be somewhere I'd like to go ahead and delve with. Other regional outlets we can always go ahead and look at the UWF or AWA or other organizations and talk about it. What if with those types of organizations? But again, I appreciate your what if status as far as for WCW. But before we head on out, my friend, make sure you give a pitch for what's going on generally with what your shows are all about at, of course, the PVD cast and, of course, Matt Talk as well.
Well, the PVD Cast is my own personal podcasting project. I sit down with a variety of different guests. Mostly, those guests are involved in the indie comic book scene of pro wrestling, hockey, comics, movies. Just all those topics are covered in the catalog of the PVD Cast. And also, Matt Talk is a Matlock. That's right. The 90s. We're talking about 91 and 92 a lot here. That was the that was the era for Matlock. It's the old Andy Griffith show. Myself and my partner Jason Taylor. We watch an episode, we review it, we discuss it, we poke fun at it, and it's because we have a special tie to that show, and we thought it'd be fun to do a show about Matlock, and we didn't take it too seriously, but lo and behold, lots of people enjoyed it. And so we just started season 8. So we only have season 8 and season 9, and then we're done. So we'll have to figure out what we're going to do. I personally have said it very vocally. I would like to do the new Matlock because I think it's a really great show.
That's what I was just going to say. So
yeah, it's a really good show. So, but there you go. You can find both those podcasts wherever you find great podcasts, no matter if it's YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. Just search for it, and I hope you enjoy it if you check it out.
Absolutely. It is, of course, John Orlando from the PVDcast and Matt Talk. Please go ahead, check them out today, pvdcast.com or PVDcast or Matt Talk, wherever you get your fine podcasts. And for myself, if you go ahead and support what I do, Lakers Fast Break, Lakers Latest, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, the State of Pro Wrestling that John and I do every month, and also as well, the Pop Culture Cosmos, where we cover the latest news and trends in pop culture each and every week, twice a week on radio stations and podcast outlets worldwide. But before we head on out, any last fond, or I don't want to say fond because there's not a lot of fond memories of WCW. Or not. There's a lot of great wrestling. There's a lot of bad ideas. There's a lot of backstage, drama that we would always follow on a weekly basis. But any last thoughts on WCW before we head on out?
One final one.
Okay.
I don't remember what it was called. I think it was called the Blacktop Brawl.
Oh, yes, where
With
they
Dustin,
drove in the truck. Yes.
Yeah, Dustin Rhodes and
the Blacktop Bully.
The Blacktop Bully. Yes. That was,
I thought that was actually better than what they think. I know they got suspended, or one of them got fired for it or something like that. I think it was Barry Darso got disciplined for it somehow. But yeah, I kind of liked it, man. Kind of liked it.
Okay. I did not, but that's all right.
Yeah, it's fun in the hay. I'll say that for lack of a better term. But it's one of those novel ideas. You say, okay, you got to try it once. If it doesn't work, you never do it again.
Okay, I can give you that.
It lives in infamy. How about that? It lives in infamy. There you go.
Okay.
Indeed. Yes. I will just say my last and final thought on WCW is that it's the organization that could have, but didn't. It was given every opportunity to succeed. It had a moment where it saw the sunlight coming through the tunnel, and then decided to go right back into the tunnel and go deep down into the depths of hell instead. They had every opportunity. They had an abundance of great wrestling talent. They had at different points of time, the players that could have changed the industry. In fact, they had the arguably most popular wrestler for years there that they didn't utilize or didn't end up utilizing in the right fashion in Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was stunning Steve Austin at that point in time and never ended up using him. They fired him and let him go. There's a myriad of mistakes you could say about WCW, but you could always say, my friend, that it never stopped being interesting to people who observe the industry like you and I.
That is absolutely true.
That's absolutely true. And I will say this again, WCW, for all of its faults, was something that provided us entertainment. But if it did provide the same for you, if you have any great memories or bad memories, the ding dongs, all the crazy gimmicks, the monster gimmicks that they, all the Turner home video, the Turner movie, the Turner related gimmicks that they had to throw out there. Oz. Do you remember Kevin Nash's Oz when he did Oz? Yeah, yes. The Mummy. Yes, they had to do the Mummy. If you remember all that, if you have any bad memories or good memories about great matches, Cactus Jack's Falls Count Anywhere, the Sting and Cactus Jack at Beach Blast, one of the greatest matches I've ever seen as well. That was a fantastic match. Still can't understand why they made it a non-title match if he was going to end up losing anyways to Sting. That just blew my mind. That's how you not promote a PPV. But okay, anyways, I leave it at that. But again, that's just WCW in a nutshell. But if you have thoughts, please let us know down below, or popculturecosmos@yahoo.com or thepvdcast.com as well. So for John Orlando, this is Gerald Glassford. Thanks so much again for joining us right here at the State of Pro Wrestling on a special edition We'll be back at the end of every month talking about what's going on in the world of pro wrestling as we get in the ring for another episode of the State of Pro Wrestling. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon. Ding, ding, ding. It's time for the State of Pro Wrestling, scheduled for one fall with a 60-minute time limit. And now, from parts unknown, your tag team champions of the world, John Orlando from the PVDCast and Gerald Glassford from the Pop Culture Cosmos.